People hire a coach when there's a gap between where they are and where they want to be. So it doesn't mean that there's a problem. It doesn't mean there's any weakness. It just means there's something you want to do that you haven't done yet. And you're like, well, how can I get there faster? How can I get there with less pain? People hire a coach, whether that be figuring out what you want to do with your life or growing your business or growing your leadership capacity. The varied ways to use a coach are as varied as human beings.
I've heard many people over the years, they say, I want more success, I want more time off, I want more money. But they never have a specific dollar figure or time figure to ask for. When people start that journey of looking for a coach, do they need to be specific, or is it okay to be more ambiguous at the start?
Well, they will be ambiguous at the start, but the coach will make them get specific. If you're a good coach, you're going to look for specifics, because more money is not a goal. How much more money? So that we can start reverse engineering how it's going to come to be.
This thought of from where you are now to where you want to be, it would also presuppose that somebody has to have a level of emotional intelligence. They have to be emotionally aware of actually where they're starting from. And according to the research at Harvard University, about 85% of the population claim to be emotionally intelligent, yet only 15% are. So when they have to define where I am, that seems to be a problem for a lot of people seeking a coach. So what are some of the symptoms, what are some of the signs that they could identify their starting point?
Well, I agree. Those statistics are fascinating, that 85% claim to be and 15% really are. You don't have to be you don't have to be completely self-aware to benefit from a coach. You just need to be willing to hear a different perspective, willing to say, maybe I don't know because I've tried 10 times and I haven't made it happen. Or you just have to be open. Like I had the opportunity to coach in the city of Miami Beach, and I had to have all the departments of the city of Miami Beach, from the sanitation workers all the way up to the mayor and his office. And so the different levels of sophistication, different levels of education, different levels of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And I didn't change a thing. Like, I was able to speak to the whole room because you're asking people questions. And when you're asking them questions, they're going to come up with their own answers at whatever level they're at, right? I'm not looking for the right answer. I'm looking for the question that's going to trigger something in you, some recognition in you, some desire in you. So really, if you let your coach do their job, you don't need to know much. You just need to be open and willing.
Well, that openness, I find, is so important, because some people are so closed to the notion of coaching. And even in Australia, a lot of people say, why are you getting a coach? What do you need a coach for? You're perfect the way you are. We love you the way you are. Can't you just be happy? And that even people tend to see coaching as a weakness. And so there's a bit of a theme, I know it's in Australia, it's also around the world, that asking for help has become a sign of weakness. But my opinion is that asking for help is a sign of strength. It tells me that people want more, whether they want more time off, they want to have more financial freedom, they want to have greater promotions or growth in the business. I think it's a great sign. What are some of those obstacles that you see around that topic when you hear those things? You're perfect the way you are. Why do you have to be so ambitious? Can't you just be like your brother?
Ambition being a dirty word, right? In the early days of coaching in the United States, people would say, what do you need a coach for? You have parents, or you have, a spouse. And what makes it's just a different relationship, and it's not about fixing a weakness. It's about having a partner in your success. And really, I see my job as helping people hear themselves, right? It's sort of like you're the voice of reason, the voice of your intuition, the person who asks you the tough questions when you're not asking them yourself. So it's really not seeing it as a weakness as much as it is adding a skill set. Like, the biggest compliment an ex-client ever gave me was they called me 5 years after we had worked together, and they said, I did this because of you and I did that because of you. And I thought I needed you again. And then I just thought of what you would have asked me and I realized I didn't need to hire you. And I was perfectly comfortable with that. Like that was a success to me because if you're working with a coach who asks great questions, you eventually start asking those questions of yourself and you change the way you think. You change your brain chemistry, you change the way you think, you change your synapses. And so none of it's about weaknesses, just it's about vision and it's about dreaming and it's about allowing more than it is about correcting a weakness. And is ambition a dirty word? I mean, I love that, Australians are more self-accepting and fun-loving, and that's all great. But then there's some people who are going to be like, I want more. And it's just human nature. It's just human nature. Once we have something, we want the next thing. And I'm not saying that from a place of greed or selfishness as much as we are naturally wired to evolve, right? No one questions a flower regrowing every spring, right? We don't say, why are you so ambitious and you want to grow out of the grass, every year? Can't you take a year off? You're like, we don't say that. So it's nature's way for you to evolve. And that's really what it's about. It's about evolving yourself, not about correcting, fixing, or squelching something in you.
In your opinion, what makes a good client? So if somebody really wants to get a significant return on their investment, and according to the International Coaching Federation, and I think you had one of their first coaching books 30 odd years ago, the International Coaching Federation did some research in alignment with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they said that coaching will yield a 7 to 10 times return on its investment. Really good executive coaching will reach up to a 42 times return on the initial investment. So for a client to be able to get really good results, a really good return on their time and energy and emotion invested, what are some of the qualities of a good client?
I love that question. A good client is open and willing. A good client does their homework. They take action in between coaching calls. And a good client is, let's see what I'm trying to say. A good client is, I'm not going to use the word ambitious, but just excited about the possibilities. That's what I'm looking for. Like open to possibilities, excited about possibilities. I'm working with the CFO of a global company right now who's never had coaching before, kind of put it off for a long time. Everyone in the company is getting coached. They finally agreed to it. And the goals that we set for 6 months have already been accomplished in one. And that was just like all of a sudden being on fire with what was possible and making it happen. And I really don't even take credit for that. I just, ask the questions and manage the process. So that's why the return on investment is so high, because I like to invite people to think about it as getting a trainer at the gym, right? When you go to the gym to work out by yourself, there's those disciplined people. And then there's the people like me that are like, I'm here 5 minutes. Can I go home? But if I'm paying a trainer, right, I'm paying a professional to be there for me, I'm going to wear my cutest little workout togs and I'm going to work really hard. And it's kind of the same idea as coaching. It's like you're going to work harder, you're going to work smarter, you're going to show up for yourself if you don't show up for yourself without the coach.
You must go to the same gym as my wife. And I love that analogy because when I go to the gym, I will just go out of discipline, whether I like it or not, whether I feel like it or not, whether it's
Good
a
on
good day or
you.
a bad day.
Good for you.
I'll go. And my wife plays the other game. She says, I'm going to go, and then she'll find all the reasons not to go. And then the final reason she can't get past is, I don't want to waste my money. And so when she books the personal trainer in advance, she's going to pay for it whether she's there or not. And it's
Right.
that final little bit of peer pressure. It's a little bit of internalized guilt where she says, well, I can't waste the money. I've already committed to it. I've already told social media that I'm going to do it, and I better go. And I find just that there, it forces her to go. And when she's there, the coach doesn't allow her to slacken off. The
That's
coach
right.
always makes sure that she finishes the final rep. You know, if you've got to do 10 squats, you don't do 7, you don't do 8, you don't do 9. We stick around till you do the 10th. And even
That's
if you
right.
have a little breather between the 8th and the 9th and the 10th, that's okay. But it's about getting through to the final commitment, which
That's
was
right.
you committed to 10.
That's right.
That's important. And for business people, having the tasking between sessions keeps them focused, keeps them on track. There's no point going to the gym and working out hard today and eating McDonald's for the next 7 days. You've got to stay focused on that outcome between sessions. And I believe in that area there, that's where the client gets a huge return on their investment. It's not the hour or 2 hours a week with the coach. It's that time plus all the other moments in between where you've got those blinkers on and you exclude everything else and you just focus on that thing that you're going towards.
That's
And
right.
keep track.
And it's who you become in the process. Like it's really shifting how you're behaving and how you're identifying with yourself, like your wife at the gym, like I'm not going to be someone who wastes money. I'm not going to be someone who doesn't do what they say they're going to do. And I've put this mechanism in place to hold me accountable. So coaching is often a mechanism by which you hold yourself accountable with another human being. And if the coach had no skill at all, that's worth the investment. But then you add someone with skills, and you've got, I call it mental popcorn. Like pop, 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 and you're just like on fire with what you can accomplish, because you see yourself differently, you see situations differently, you see the forest through the trees, you just do things differently, and I think that's why it's taken off all over the world the way that it has. And it is distinct from therapy. Like a lot of people worry like that, you have a therapist, you have a coach, what's the difference? And therapy is about healing the past to feel complete in the present. And coaching is about leveraging what's right in the present instead of what's wrong and creating an extraordinary future. So therapy, the past, coaching, the future.
You mentioned something there about who you become on the journey. I see a lot of people have goals for all the things they want to do. They want to have this bucket list and they fill the bucket with all the things they want to do. They put in the bucket all the things that they want to have. But as they go on that journey, a lot of them never have that personal transformation so that they can become the person to do the things they want to do and have the things that they want to have. And that bucket list mentality, it's great because you might get clarity on what you want to do and have, but they often don't put the B things in that bucket. Who do I need to become to do and have what I desire? So on the journey, what's more important? Is it the achievement of the goal or is it the person that you become on that journey?
I think it's the transformation, because the transformation or the who you become, that's permanent. Goals are they're not permanent. You know what I mean? Like you set one, you meet it, then you set the next one. But the fairy tale of Alice in Wonderland, right? So when she was small and goes through a small door and then she grows 6 feet and she can't get back through the little door, that's another analogy that I like to use to describe you when you're being coached. If you change if you change who you're being, that is sustainable and that does not go backwards. And that's how the goals keep moving forward, is because you've changed. Right? So you can hire as many trainers at the gym as you want, but if you go home and, like you said, eat McDonald's the rest of the week, you haven't changed. But if you have this feeling after being at the gym of like, this is how I want to feel, this is how vibrant I want to be, what other habits are going to support that vibrancy? And that's how you should start shifting you and changing you.
I was around about 16 and I was interviewed in a magazine called Water Skis News. And they asked me what my goal was for sports. And I said I wanted to become the Australian champion. So I knew where I was starting from and I knew that I wanted to become an Australian champion. But I thought at the start of the journey I was going to be able to achieve that goal the following year because I'd looked around and I'd seen other people in their first and second year become an Australian champion. But year after year after year, that goal didn't manifest. It kept getting pushed further and further back. And it took me 11 years to achieve that goal. And as I look back on it now, I learned more about discipline and resilience more than anything else because I had the discipline to start, maintain, and then finish. I also had the resilience to go through multiple operations, multiple failures, multiple setbacks. And the ingraining into the neurology during that 11-year period has served me for the rest of my life. Now, on reflection, that goal should have never have taken 11 years, but we couldn't have certain conversations with our peer group. One of the big things that got in my way was I had this fear of injuring myself. And I remember going out on the board and I'd be coming in towards the wake of the boat. And I could see in my mind the trick that I wanted to do. But then I'd start to say to myself things like, don't crash, don't drop the rope. If you drop the rope, you're going to injure yourself. And I quickly discovered that this fear was preventing me from getting to the next level. But because there was no older people in our community who had already done the things that we wanted to do, we didn't have somebody to talk to. How do I get over this fear? How do I get past this mental and emotional blockage? Because I know if I can just get past that, I know I can do the trick. And I found that was my biggest obstacle along the way. It was the fear of failure. It was the fear of being injured. It was the fear of not the criticism, but the perceived criticism. What if I crash? What if I wipe out? And I couldn't get past those. And I think if I had a coach during those years, specifically not for the sport, because I was a great athlete, but for the mindset, I would have been able to achieve the 11-year goal in 2 or 3, just like other people were doing. And it's interesting to look back on that. The biggest block was something that I couldn't self-coach through.
Right, because you probably didn't even realize it until, in hindsight, how much time you spent visualizing and worrying about the thing that could go wrong instead of the thing that could go right. And that's exactly what, a coach will point your attention to the better reframe, so that you continue to stay in action and growing and evolving. That's a great analogy for this too.
And we had great advice from friends, and it was just like, stop being a pussy. Stop being a little bitch. Go harder, go bigger, just charge the wake. Now, that was advice from friends, but it wasn't the advice that we actually needed. That advice didn't help overcome the mental and emotional blockages. It actually made it worse because you'd think to yourself, maybe I'm a little bitch. Maybe I'm just a whinger. Maybe
Right,
I'm
just
weak.
more
And
pressure.
you go out and you do it even harder and you even crash harder. And then those obstacles get bigger. And that's what I found with the reference group is they were great athletes, they were great talent, and they could teach you how to do the trick, but they could never share the mindset. And that wasn't their area of specialization. But for a lot of coaches, that is what they do. They're not necessarily experts at what you're trying to achieve. They're experts on the mechanism and the process to get you there.
Right. I
So
always
over the
say that coaching is a process expertise, not necessarily a content expertise. It's a processing expertise.
like your opening statement, from getting you from where you are to where you want to be. A lot of people don't have clarity on their actual starting point, and that goal that they want oftentimes isn't the right one for them. But the coach has the mechanism and the process to close that gap and help you identify it. So the coach also has to have special skills. The coach is going to have knowledge. The coach is going to have the right attitude. Over the past 30 years, what have you learned about what makes a great coach?
That's a really good question. What makes a great coach is someone who can get their own ego out of the way, because it's not about our golden nuggets or our gems of answers and wisdom. It's about being able to ask good questions, having a certain amount of humility, being a tremendous listener, not just giving the space to listen to people, because sometimes letting people drone on for an hour is not helpful. So it's not just being a good listener to anything, it's being a listener that hears in between what people are really saying. And I think it comes with experience. I don't think it means you have to be an older person to be a good coach. There's plenty of really awesome young coaches, but it's just about your soul level of experience. Do you come to it with this open-minded love for your clients, or are you there to prove how much you know? Right? So it requires a certain amount of ego reduction. I call coaching coach or training coaches, I tell them, is ego reduction therapy. Like, we got to reduce your ego. So a great coach is not the answer person, they're the question asker. A great coach is someone who wants to bring out the best in the other person, not so much show how good they are. And I think that it does require training. I think, the profession has suffered all the way through all the last 30 years from it looking like, oh, I give advice to all my friends. All my friends come to me for advice. I'm a coach. And it's not advice. It's not about the advice. It's about opening up people to their potential. So I still think like we have a perception problem in the industry of people thinking, A, it's because of a weakness that you need a coach, and B, that anyone can be a coach because they can give advice. And it's neither of those things.
I remember my first coaching role. I was coaching water sports, and I was asked by some mentors in the field. They said, Daniel, you're really good on the water. You're not the best, but you're really good. Would you come and coach people on what you can do? And I thought to myself, well, what makes me a good coach? Like, why are you choosing me? They said, well, it's not that you're the best, but what you can do is you can break down the trick into a few small elements. And I reflected on that, and I knew exactly what the person had to do on the board on the approach. When they hit the wake, I knew exactly what they had to do. When they landed, I knew exactly what they had to do. Now, it didn't mean that I could do that trick, but I could explain to them these are the steps involved and then provide feedback in the moment. And it was like I had this, not a photograph, maybe like a little bit of a photographic memory, a slow frame memory where I could watch what they were doing and then overlay it on how it should be done and then coach them through. Okay, when you approach, back off the speed a little bit, flatten the board, pull the handle in. And it was amazing that somebody who'd been struggling with a trick and they hadn't been able to achieve it after the 100th attempt, with a little bit of coaching and being pointed in the right direction, they did it immediately. And one thing I was very good at, and you mentioned humility, I never claimed the trophy. I never said, because of me, you're where you're at.
Right.
I said, because of you, you did it. You were on the board, you were behind the boat, you had the guts, you get to have all the glory. And I learned that from a young age, and I tried to figure out what that actually was. And I was having a conversation with Brian Tracy, and I said, what are the types of coaches out there? And he said, well, you've got the sage from the stage, and they stretch their hands out and they kind of look like they've been crucified on the cross. And they say, I'm not your guru, I'm not your savior. And you have those types of people and you scream their name. And I said, well, what's the other one? He said, well, the other one is the guide from the side. And what you do is you're walking the path with them. And you're saying, look how magnificent you are. And you're constantly shining that spotlight on the achievements of the client. And I figured that out. I said, that's me. I'm the guide from the side. I don't want their glory. The glory belongs to them. And I found that was so empowering to be able to give the person all the glory instead of other coaches who are out there trying to steal the glory. The client is where they are because of who I am.
Right.
Not at all. So I think that's an important quality. What else? What else makes for a great coach? Do they have to have their own life experiences? Because we hear about these coaches whose mother fed them liquid soap, and now people think, well, if I haven't had liquid soap poured down my throat, I'll never be able to be a coach. Do we have to have that extreme? to
No,
be a good coach?
I don't think you have to have suffered greatly in order to be a good coach, but you need to be aware of humanity, and be sensitive to humanity. Because if you're not going to come from the ego, then you're coming from a heart-centered place. So your guide to the side is always going to, choose the better language, the better reframe, the better picture of what's possible, the better picture of you, going to help you overcome the fear. And it may be an overused acronym, but my favorite acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real, right? So we're gonna constantly help you see beyond that. And when I was on the cover of a magazine many moons ago with a client, and they had decided to shrink the picture of me and put me on the shoulder of my client. So here I'm the client, and then here's little me. And they're like, a coach is like a guardian angel for your career, right? So you're just like the little voice sitting on the shoulder. You're not, the sage who guides the way. And I think that's just so important. I just think it's such a noble profession. And, even the ego of somebody who says, well, why do you need that? They don't know what they're missing. They don't know that they're deciding to just stay in the box that they're in when there's so much available to us as human beings. And, and there's always risk involved. Whenever you go for something bigger, or you think bigger, or you feel bigger, there's always the risk that you're going to get hurt or make a mistake, and most people want to avoid that. So that's why they don't act.
I love that angel on the shoulder. One of my clients, instead of calling me the angel on the shoulder, she said, the voice of the whinging mother. She said, Daniel, I hear your voice in my ear. When I go to press the snooze button and I hear this whinging mother's voice of Daniel, don't hit the snooze button. Get up. Ask for what you want. Say it how you want it. And she said, Daniel, whenever I go to do the wrong thing, your voice talks to me. She said, I've had that voice in my ear the whole year. And within a year, she was able to get herself back on track. But it was
Amazing.
that voice of reason. And it's also playing a little bit of that devil's advocate, showing
Right.
them what they can do and where they can go, but also showing them what can happen and the dangers of not doing what they said they'd do. And I
Right.
think that's for a coach. So we know how to be a good client. We know the qualities of a good coach. But so many people never launch their coaching businesses. There's people out there who could be impacting lives. There could be people out there running their own coaching business. But the business of coaching is a beast in and of itself. You've succeeded. You were the first coach ever on the Oprah Winfrey show. Your TEDx talk has had in excess of 1.9 million views. What can you share with us about the business of coaching?
Unfortunately, in coaching school, when you learn how to coach, they don't teach you about the business side of the business. And I had been an actor, and it was the same thing when I was an actor. You go to learn your craft, but no one teaches you about the business side of the business. And so it's equally as important, because your skill set, if you never get to use it on anybody because you're afraid to sell, or you're afraid to market yourself, or you don't want to be visible, or you don't know how to organize yourself, you are robbing people of a service that they need. So that's the other side of the work that I do, is to help coaches stick out in a crowded marketplace and prosper, because you have something so valuable to offer, and a little business acumen takes you a long way as a coach. And so I say to anyone who's listening and watching us who is a coach, and you're hiding behind your website, or you're not having the conversations, you have to have the conversations. And what's that conversation? Someone says, what do? You better have a really good answer, and don't say you're a coach, not because there's anything wrong with that, but because it doesn't mean anything. Coaching is how we get people there. So when I work with the public, I'm known for helping people figure out what to do with their life. That's how I answer. And when people say, where were you last year? I needed you. Or, oh, I need you. Or my cousin needs you. That's how I know I've hit the nail on the head, and they know what I'm talking about. And then when I'm talking to a coach, I say, I help coaches differentiate themselves in the marketplace and prosper. Oh, right? So much different than I'm a coach. And again, nothing wrong with the word coach, just that people don't understand it even after all this time. So I implore coaches to talk about the result you create. That's how people will understand that they need you.